Back just in time, these guys vetoed way faster than every other series, but that is what happens when you face each other a billion times. They've actually been avoiding each other in the specified finals for the last couple of weeks, but we are back to the old standard. Hells yeah. Let's do it. After I get the predictions up. Gotta give people what they want, and that is gambling. Alright, now we're into the best of 5 finals. In the top right of Alcyone, we do have Sidestream Gaming's MaxPax. And on the bottom left, we have the Team Liquid Terran, Clem. Which is probably the only time I bother actually trying to say something with an actual French accent. If you ever try to do it on other French words, people just look at you like you're a tryhard. Which isn't false, but it's still annoying. You can never win. As an American, if I say croissant, French people will laugh. But if I try to say croissant, they also will laugh. There's no winning. But Clement is just fun to say. And Clem is one of the nicest people I've ever met. Not that I haven't loved basically all the French people I've ever met, even if they are a little snarky sometimes and make fun of my French. It's fine. But Clem actually would never. I don't think I've ever heard Clem say anything bad, even jokingly. MaxPax, don't have much more to say about his personality. He has been interviewed a couple of times. Lovely meme going on that he is Danish royalty. I'm all on board with it, but the only thing we really know about him is that he is a recluse. He doesn't like going to offline events. And he can be funny, but maybe not intentionally. He is a very, very blunt person. If you've ever seen some of the clips from the times he does go on to people's streams and gets interviewed or does commentary of a sort, it's actually been pretty funny, but again, maybe unintentionally. Like when Coconut Games said, "Sorry, I must not be impressing you." Or that Forget didn't impress you, and he said, "Nothing you do impresses me." That was pretty funny because it was so deadpan. But anyway. The two players' personalities aside, their play style we are very familiar with because we see this all the time. But we know that Clem can be the favored in the early and mid-game, but actually as the game continues, it does feel like MaxPax is favored. Now, sometimes Clem is just so favored in the early and mid-game that we don't even get to question what would happen should they go into the late game. And that might be skewing the bias I have a little bit, actually. That the games at which Clem is playing not his best lead to those later games, and then he loses them. It makes sense. But the games he's playing his best, he just kills MaxPax too fast. Possible. But it seems to be at least somewhat of the trend. And we can kind of see that point in which we believe Clem's going to 3-0 or MaxPax is going to 3-0 around the transition from the early to the mid-game. Which I would say is kind of more the, like the first 2 bio-based attacks with Medivacs, you know? And depending on how the game's going, that might not even be Clem attacking MaxPax. There might be some type of attack happening from MaxPax that's more holding the game hostage. Like, it does depend, but yeah, I think around that time, you can see either Clem cut the head off the snake, easy peasy win against the guy, 2 drops, attack on the main, and, you know, MaxPax folds. Or we see MaxPax hold brilliantly and then play into the late game in a really good position. Last time I saw MaxPax one of the 4-gate, I mean, might have been during one of those weak best of 5s Clem has played against them, but not too often. Most recently, Clem did 2-0 MaxPax in a best of 3. I believe that is the most recent result. I could be wrong. I haven't actually looked at Illegal Act, but as far as the Open Cups, I believe that is correct. And they both have done some very basic openers. MaxPax going into a Twilight Council with a 3rd gateway on the way. Now that's 3, not 4, but he has been using this to still be kind of aggressive. And with that Warp Prism on the way, we certainly are believing it is aggressive. He could be using this to defend against a theoretical like tank push or something like Kelazur would do, but we know this is not the dynamic between the two. Clem's not often doing that type of push, and MaxPax isn't often trying to defend with early gateways. He's trying to do maximum damage with it. Speaking of which, Adept got into the main. It looks shocked that it could. And they decided, you know what, I will go into the main. Killed 2 SCVs. I believe they were both building barracks, so the extra annoying ones. Pylon scouted the medevac, or maybe just MaxPax knows the medevac must be there, because that is pretty on the nose. And so Stalkers are kind of in position. They're more in position to bait. So the medevac boosts in and then they can blink, but they will not one-shot the medevac. So we will be holding our breath as far as the amount of damage the Widowmine does. War Prism goes into the main base. Again, 3 gate, not 4. Faster transition out of the aggression, but less aggression possible. So this has seemingly been what MaxPax has figured to be more effective. Widowmine did pop off. I don't think it killed it killed a Stalker, actually. Still enough Stalkers to tear down that medevac, and the Marines are not going to get any further damage done. 1 more probe goes down. Still the loss of a medevac and those Marines. I mean, altogether, it did not feel very worth it for Clem so far. That is the case. MaxPax winning in the resources lost. But then, you know, Clem doesn't really interrupt a lot of his build to do that drop. MaxPax does interrupt his 3rd base a little bit to get to the 3 gate, although he really did not warp in a lot. And that is the difference between a 3 gate for safety, I would say, and a 3 gate for aggression. Or a 3 gate just for the option, I guess, which is kind of what I think MaxPax does. It's like, well, I could warp in a lot or I could not. And he has not warped in a ton. He's been on the initial 4 units for the longest time, only just now adding in 3 more Stalkers, long after his Nexus is done and even almost saturated. Well, some Stalker warpings defensively, I guess, to be fair. So there are quite a few now that all of them have joined up together. But 14 Stalkers at minute 6.5 rather than minute 5.5 or 6. I mean, clearly Clem is prepared to deal with that. It's just that now these Stalkers can be used to follow the push. And with this many Stalkers, it is kind of annoying. Killing medevacs, killing Marines, killing tanks, Warp Prism, building Zealots, and then flying into the main. Seen it a couple times before, guys. Seen it a few times. And MaxPax ensuring that he has that 3 base economy. Something that is not always guaranteed when he actually goes for a 4 gate. He's kind of stopped doing that versus Clem. They've been ineffective, but if he goes for a real 4 gate, a real aggressive build, that would have already been judged. It would have already done the damage it would have, and then we'd be able to determine pretty quickly whether or not Clem's going to win. On this 3 gate, it's a little more ambiguous. Stalkers trying to trade out with some of these units. So far, just Marines going down, a couple of Stalkers. I don't think any big money items like a tank or Marauder have gone down. Yep, just the medevac from the earlier drop. The Stalkers are still getting bodied, actually. The auto turret from behind, hoping to capture the very weakened Stalkers. That didn't necessarily happen, but still a really cool idea. The Raven was destroyed in the process. Shield battery helping to save a lot of the lives of the remaining Protoss units, but that shield battery is now a goner, and that was the only shield battery available. The army is quite stimmed, but they are able to successfully retreat from the Zealots. Widowmine's popping off, friendly fire in the tank, but the bio still holding strong behind the buffer of the tank, actually tanking. But more Zealots have been produced, and that might just be enough with the help of the Immortal tearing down the last tank as well. It looks like MaxPax with another warp in should be able to take care of this, but I would say that at this point, the damage has been done. It's not that Clem was able to break through and win the game easy peasy stim and win. It is, though, that Clem killed so many units, reset the more expensive Protoss army, that I believe that he does have a strong chance of winning this game. Looks like he also demolished the Warp Prism at some point, which I completely missed, but it's a very good thing, as now he can focus entirely on trying to end this game. No distractions in place. MaxPax will eventually start to send a couple of Zealots off to go for distraction across town, but that's going to take a little while before he feels comfortable. Goes outside to try and meet the army, but instead that army had already moved over to the left side. That Nexus might just have to be canceled. It certainly will. But canceling isn't so problematic. MaxPax will need a 4th base, of course, but at least it wasn't done and killed. He's got a second chance at life here. Clem is in his prime zone, I suppose. Zealots do make their way across the map as expected, and that bunker actually isn't full, but the reinforcement line was strong enough to take care of this. A momentary breather for the Protoss. Very momentary. MaxPax is about to be out-upgraded as Clem's +1 armor finishes. We got Ghost on the way, still only on a single Colossus. Second one not quite done. No extended Thermal Lance either. One Viking probably what helped kill the War Prism. And actually, we're not going to have another battle. MaxPax sizes up the situation and says, I have no chance. Let's go next. In the top left of Equilibrium, we have Clem. And on the top right, it is MaxPax. So, MaxPax really not getting the best possible setup. His Stalkers didn't actually trade all that efficiently, I would say. I mean... No, yeah, I'd use the word efficiently. Yeah, because, you know, if you kill one Marauder for one Stalker, that's still not efficient for the Stalker, technically. But he wasn't even doing that. He was killing Marines. So... And there wasn't really a halt on the Terran army either. And that's ideally what a Stalker force would love to do. I gave it more credit than what ended up actually happening. Which is that the Stalker count was like pretty high, and I thought that they would be able to pick off a Medevac, a tank, or a Marauder, or, you know, if you're going to pick off Marauders, hopefully 2 or 3. And they didn't. And they were still going down. They were getting heavily injured, even if they weren't falling. And the auto turrets were almost the slam dunk. Not quite, but effectively. The Stalker's going down. The shield battery not being part of the actual fight. The Zealots not getting as effective as friendly fire as they were hoping on those Widow Mines. And the bio successfully kind of cornering themselves behind tanks so that tanks are actually tanking. Like, that was a not often found ideal engagement from the Terran side of things, I would say. MaxPax was probably still pretty hopeful that his charge lock count was going to do the trick, because it was coming from 2 different directions, the numbers were pretty good, and the army was still at least somewhat, you know, dependent on the tanks, or I guess the Widow Mines popping perfectly. And the Widow Mines kind of did, actually. Like, the Terran army really needed those Widow Mines to not friendly fire and to hit the Zealots and splash a decent number of them, and they did. As opposed to some of their previous engagements that look a lot like that. And the first time that MaxPax done a 3-gate blink into charge, where MaxPax's Zealots get a Widow Mine to friendly fire the bio specifically, they actually surround the Terran army so that they can't successfully retreat, and micro is another thing that usually happens. And usually, I guess, it's a very close engagement in which the faster reinforcements from the Protoss Defender ends up actually punishing Clem's tenacity, his eagerness to continue the engagement. I would say those things usually happen, and MaxPax usually is still playing the first game out, but because it was such a, actually really good engagement for the Terran, there was no punish on the reinforcement line, and Clem just got to go hard on the attack, no worry about any Warp Prism harassment either, so really the ideal setup for the Terran, less so for the Protoss. We are going to go back into Blink regardless of the outcome of the first game. It is a very different map for it, and we could have even going up to an actual 4-gate. See, it used to be that MaxPax was either 4-gate or 4-gate. And then he was doing some 3-gating. Now he's actually even incorporated a 2-gate expansion. And that is actually what he's doing. But I would say 6 months ago, 4 months ago even, I mean, MaxPax would rarely open Blink into 2-gateway into 3rd base. Maybe on this map in particular would be an outlier, as that gold base is rather tempting for the Protoss. And very effective. This map is favored towards the Protoss. What am I drop? Not doing a whole lot so far. Natural, I expect much of the same. Yep. Perfect pull on the probes. Gold base still producing this entire time. And the Medevac really does want to go check that. Because obviously it got good scouting in the man and the natural. It doesn't quite know if there's not another gateway here. Could be 3 gateway. Seeing the Nexus would be easy peasy. Hey, he expanded. Hey, that's the target of my next attack. It's also just what Protoss have really been doing. Equilibrium has turned into this is the third, as opposed to this is the tricky third. Perhaps not as many vulnerabilities at that third base, at that gold rich Vespian geyser as there should be, as far as the map making. But, and on the other hand, it is nice to see the Protoss win rate actually be very good on a map, as opposed to generally kind of bad. So, yeah. Charge's on the way immediately after that blink is done, so we are going very heavy into the charge lots. That's what you do. I mean, the Rich Vespian Geyser is nice to have in case, I guess, you are playing a Colossus-based style, but the thing is that if you're going to play Colossus, then the fact that this third base is so far away and is heavily abusable by tanks is a really big weakness. So it's not just that the Rich Vespian, the rich minerals give you so many Zealots. It's also that those Zealots are the most mobile thing you're going to have. Zealots and Stalkers. Stalkers went in, killed a supply depot, got out, no problem. Not even the full might of the Stalkers, actually. MaxPax did not take care of the medevac drop. Where the heck is it? Still chilling. Chilling like a villain. And that's where all the Stalkers are. First and foremost into the charge, but we are also moving forward into Colossus. Warp Prism will be ready for harassment, so I think there's going to be plenty of options from MaxPax to distract Clem, which is almost his ultimate goal. And then, I mean, ideally, when you do eventually get to the 2-3 Colossus situation, you're probably also moving over to a fourth. And you probably have enough army to split, and you're not nearly as vulnerable to this third base being out like that. And Clem is really just taking it easy here. I don't think he's playing it because he's so afraid of his opponent. It's just there's really not much to do until you're totally, completely prepared with all of your upgrades, so chilling is what the Terran does at this point. MaxPax gonna have a lot of time to set up his defenses. Barely saves an observer. Nicely done. No interference matrix. Do want to highlight that. That Raven is just a bare bones one. But it does look like he intends to be alongside the army, so more so looking for the anti-armor missile. A lot of times you'd see him move this away to the north and go for some auto turret harassment, but not the case here. Observer's still alive. Lots of spotters for the Protoss, and the Stalkers are being paid attention to. Gonna successfully retreat. +1 attack going to finish for both parties by the time this engagement comes, if it actually comes here. The Warp Prism, of course, flying in at the time which the Terran army moves out. I mean, tide goes in, tide goes out, right? It is as nature intended in this matchup. And this will buy just that extra little bit of time, the extra medevac worth of units away from the main engagement, and hopefully for MaxPax, this will be enough for him to defend. Looking at his army with equal upgrades, I'm feeling it for the Protoss. Those 3 tanks could be quite terrible, in fact, against the number of charge lots that are available. Medevac was also sniped. A nice catch there from MaxPax, who no longer has scouting on the main army, but still has a Warp Prism in the main base, and that is a heavy warp in, which, you know, takes away from the front line, but I don't think he needs it, especially because Clem wasn't even paying attention, and this was a very, let's say, uninspired Terran game. Kind of felt like Clem was already out of it before it really even went getting going. Not that, again, he could have done very much while waiting to move out, but game number 3 is going to be an Oceanborn. Bottom right, Clem. Top left, MaxPax. MaxPax having an even easier victory, I think. Yeah, I mean, both games were pretty one-sided. They were decided very strongly at a certain point, but there is a little bit more of a what-if for MaxPax in Game 1. There was basically no what-if for Clem in Game 2. He was clearly just not into it, you know? He moved out, he got Warp Prismed, he got Warp Prismed hard, and jumped on by the Protoss without being prepared, and he just was like, yeah, okay. It was, uninspired is really the word I would use there. Now, Clem isn't one to leave a game too early or seem to have his emotions really affect him all that much. So I'm not trying to say that he just gave up before it began, but it wouldn't surprise me if he went into that map kind of just, you know, being like, all right, let's try. And then when things went to shit with the Warp Prism, second Zella warp in when there was 7 or 8 or whatever it was. I think that's when he was already convinced it wasn't going to go well and his entire army gets caught off guard. Of course you tap out. Of course. I think he was... The warp prism, I think, really was the kicker. And then the second warp in for sure. But the first warp in with the warp prism, or the first drop of the warp prism, even that. Because it does seem like that is one of the biggest contributors to who wins, is whether or not the warp prism gets a warp into the main. If it does, MaxPax's chances of winning go up 30% or some random number, you know, but they do go up. Even if the warp prism isn't that effective. And then if it gets a big warp in like that, well, then it goes even higher up, right? Because at that point, that is almost guaranteed to be effective. But if Clem is able to focus on his attack like he did in the first game, then it's very, very much his favor. I mean, this is an obvious thing. If people are missing tools in the matchup that are good tools, then their chances of winning go down. Yes, I know I'm explaining some basic logic, but then there seems to be that little extra push when it comes to these two players. A lot of the outcome of their best ofs hinge on that. I guess that's also why I put in the mid-game kind of being the determining factor. You can clearly see is going to win the game. Is that Warp Prism effect and then the first move-out effect of the Terran. Where I think against any other matchup of MaxPax versus Kelazur, Clem versus Showtime, Spirit versus Geralt, whatever. Like, there'd be so many more points of, well, this could happen, that could happen, this could happen, this could happen. Sometimes there are games against each other. These two can be, I guess, binary. Anyway, we got a 1-Rex expands. Factory's already done, actually, so we're getting the Cyclones out. The engineering bay block didn't happen, but the bunker certainly did. And the bunker only has 1 unit in it, so not too bad, but obviously with the micro that goes down, Clem is particularly annoying. That SCV is 1 shot from death, but so far so good on the micro. With the shield battery up, this is inevitable. The Protoss will hold. They will force the bunker to be salvaged. The Reaper will try and go into the main and get some last-minute scouting and damage done, but this is determined to work out well for the Protoss once the shield battery is up and in position. So the Reaper is doing exactly what I just said, getting that last-second scout, another probe, if it possibly can. And then the front is about to be scouted by the Cyclone follow-up. And the front at this point is what you need to scout. You know, the Twilight Council, you know, the single gateway, but is that 2 gateways on the front? Maybe a gateway's tucked in there. What is it? And it is only 1 additional gateway. The Cyclones won't actually get close enough to determine that. They are a little shy. Outgunned 3-2. Although that didn't break the lock on. Whoops-a-daisy. Oh my god, that Cyclone actually going to get away? No, not quite. The Adept Shade will catch up, get that last shot. The second Cyclone also going to go down without trading out. And that was 2 Cyclones killed for 1 Stalker. 2 injured Stalkers, sure, but they're still alive. That's a bit more important. Now, this is a 3-gate, not a 4-gate once again, but if you do pump all of your production facilities into the offense, all your gateway warp-ins go on that warp prism, then you can still win the game on the attack. And Clem really has to take that seriously. Now, he also might be a little scared that it is indeed a 4-gate, not just a 3. But even if he knew for a fact it was a 3-gate, defense is warranted. Like, to be a little scared here is absolutely necessary. So second bunker is usually reserved for the 4-gate, but might be the, oh, Jesus! Mind if that goes down. Might be the safety blanket that he feels good about. Wouldn't mind not going to hit anything as the blink away was effective, and this wouldn't mind drop was a failure. The bunker was okay, but not great, and the Cyclones were not great either. Wouldn't necessarily call them a failure, but they weren't great. Dark Shrine is on the way. Now, this Raven has been pretty consistent, so as far as the surprise DTs, I'm not sure we're going to get very much there, and the Raven should be controlled. 2 tanks out and about should eventually guard the SEV line. This is a decent number of Stalkers with the ability to blink reflexively or engage on top of a tank if they saw an opportunity, but there was no opportunity there. So, you know, I think, again, concern was warranted. But the point of concern of dying is now, it's now gone. 2 bunkers, 2 tanks, enough bio to help out. You're not concerned about dying. But you still could absolutely be concerned about taking damage. The SCVs could go down to the Stalkers. The tanks could go down to the Stalkers. The Raven could be shot down is still a main concern here. That tank is going to go down. Auto turrets come down as well, and Marines are on top of those Stalkers. Raven is being a little overzealous, and that is going to fall. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. 4 SCVs lose their lives. Couple of key units of the Terran army. 12 Stalkers, but is it worth it if the DTs now have no detection? Kind of seems like it might be worth it. Command Center number 1, 10 seconds away from getting to that scan. Command Center number 2, nowhere close. Missile turrets placed down as fast as possible, but Clem is going to be shaking his head about losing that Raven, because it could have left. It could have left, but it was clearly in one of his main hotkeys. Kept on maneuvering with the bio over the top of those Stalkers, and that has caused him to lose the game? Question mark? I think so. Because if Clem was able to build a second Raven and go across the map, there'd maybe be a chance. But then he wouldn't have medevac, so I don't know how true that is. But if he can't attack right now while his army is better than his opponent's, he's not going to attack soon enough to make up for the economic damage he just took. 15 SCVs went down. I mean, he's still able to afford the production for the most part. You can see the starport's not working, the third barracks isn't working. Clem knows he's in trouble. Gonna go for a double drop across the map. MaxPax has 3 bases, 6 gases, production finishing up here. Not a whole lot of army, though, still. The warpings were just used on the offense. The Stalkers looking to chase down a couple of units on the forefront. Don't realize the units have already escaped behind his back, heading towards the main. And that drop is pretty effective. 8 probes go down in the blink of an eye. Pylons now being targeted, and MaxPax is going to be warping in some not impressive units into the gunfire. Charge lots without any upgrades will be barely enough with the promise of more reinforcements. And the drop, I think, is already pretty happy. Killed 9 probes, 3 pylons actually, depowered 3 gateways, and is still alive. It's actually pretty good. And MaxPax, I just really think was not aware the drop had already left. Because, I mean, it's obvious that the Terran could try to drop. I don't think MaxPax was surprised by the idea. But I do think that maybe the Warp Prism was supposed to be over there scouting, or the Observer was supposed to scout the medevac pickup in the main, or something happened which we just barely didn't see it. So a lot of damage done, and that could be the recovery damage as well. Clem still ahead in the army supply and in the upgrades with +1. Warp Prism, though, looking to be the death of Clem again. It will finally go down thanks to the missile turret, and the Zealots will be taken care of pretty easily. Only 7 SCVs went down to that particular harassment. MaxPax in a little bit of trouble right now. 2 Immortals, shoot about overcharge, and then plenty of Stalkers, but no upgrades, very few charge lots. Good pickup on the medevac, now using the force fields against the Protoss army. And MaxPax is indeed in a lot of trouble. That overcharge is going to dissipate. He's nowhere close to having any upgrades. He is finally going to have a Colossus. And that might just be enough with the help of the further Stalker reinforcements. Zealots come on the backside as well. Widowmine's popping off very effectively, but that is not enough bio left over, especially because it's really a lot of Marines. The Colossus packing a punch against the Marines. Immortals doing so against the Marauders. Kind of the perfect scenario at the end. Clem not able to use the full might of his army. He had to bring the rest of it across the map. So while he still has an army lead with that +1, it isn't all together in an ideal scenario. Gonna try and go into the main base. Fortunately, it doesn't get blinked upon, so the 2 medevacs will live, but Clem still trying to recover from the DT damage from earlier on. Down 18 workers, no 3rd CC, basically all in. If he does kill more probes, there's a chance he could recover, but he's going to go for the throat. He's going to jump top of the army. Colossus will survive. Overcharge available. Immortals might get picked off, and the Widowmines will get some decent shots, but not even that amazing, actually. That overcharge really helped that one Immortal soak the rest of them up. Big ol' concave is the best that Clem can do here. Upgrades have evened up at this particular time. 2 Colossus still alive. Plenty of Stalkers to provide that defense, and Clem will not get the damage done on the other side of the map. He will have to tap out, and MaxPax will lead the series 2-1. Now in his last life, In the bottom left, it is Team Liquid's Clem. The top right of Hecate, it is MaxPax. And I don't think there's an excuse today for Clem. Don't think he was playing any particularly grueling set of matches before this. But even though I kind of excused the last 2 losses from him, like his games versus Rain were really weird and his games versus Estrella were really not great. Generally, when it comes to Clem versus MaxPax, the dynamic has been, for the last 6 months, Clem overall the favorite. 4-1 in wins, something like that. But then when MaxPax wins, it's almost like he looks really strong. And you're like, well, did MaxPax figure something out? Is Clem now going to have concerns every time he faces MaxPax? And then the next time they face Clem, 2-0 or 3-0 them. You're like, okay, I guess not. I've been kind of confused by their dynamic for a while, to a certain extent. Like, I can watch the games and I can see why wins happen and losses happen. But in the overall history of the two, when you look at their Ligilac scores, the patterns don't necessarily match up with other patterns in which you generally would see someone overwhelmingly the favorite lose once and then go back on a humongous win streak. Like a Heerman versus Geralt or something. Or you see them win and then there's a lot more back and forth. Or you see them win and then the person who was losing previously is now the winner. Like, it feels like this is one of the only examples, if you look at the history, of 2 players who first play as much as they do. Because that's the first outliers. These guys play so often against each other. It's insane. But then also, it's a Clem victory 4 or 5 times in a row, then a MaxPax dominating victory, then back to a Clem victory 3 or 4 times in a row, then a dominating MaxPax victory. And you're like, okay, all right. You can't blame the map changes. You can't blame the metas necessarily. You can't blame someone figuring something out, really. Although MaxPax did do a pretty consistent change from going for the 4-gate to the 3-gate almost every single time. He still does a lot of the similar builds and styles of play that he would always do. It's always something to talk about, I guess, when there's not much happening. There is something happening here, though. We got Zealots, Adept Harassment. Bunker does finish in time, and the SCVs will be saved. The Reaper will be saved. And the Command Center will be delayed. Not much you can do about that. The SCVs both injured. I think one of them is not one shot. The yellow one would be healthier, wouldn't it? Do I not remember how it goes? Yeah, the yellow one is healthier. Yeah, let me second guess myself. Okay, well now, like, the point is, like, it was 2 shot, but, 1 shot and then it's in red. And then there we go, 1 shot there, almost 1 shot. The other SCV actually does win out versus the Adept with the Hellions helping. And now it is 1 Reaper, 2 Hellions racing across the map. Command Center back to building. And Winter Mines as the follow-up. Clem, I guess, kind of winning out there. I'll lose the second SCV. As long as the Command Center isn't further delayed, I think it's still okay. Although, almost got it off too soon. Big wall, gonna help MaxPax defend any Hellion aggression, which had some potential without that wall. Very few units back at home, as you can see. Reaper Grenade pops the Stalkers out of the wall. 2 Hellions will 2-shot. One of them close to death, though, is about to be tasered. So close to being tasered, come on. Okay, there it is. Now we're in a 3-shot territory, and that just won't happen very quickly. 4 probes go down to this little hit squad, making up for the SCV damage and lack of mining, because that's also been an issue. I mean, SCV kill, lack of mining from some of these SCVs, and delayed Command Center. I think you've added that up together. MaxPax has done enough damage, and Clem kind of needed to do something in return. 4 probes is probably that something. MaxPax only ahead by 5 right now, so you do want to bump that number up a little bit. Wintermine drop is delayed as well. Where the hell is the medevac? Oh! Oh! Well, that's not how I was expecting the game to end. I said that Clem isn't the player that taps out early and lets his emotions get to him, but I don't think he was feeling this matchup today. I think that's what we all can agree on. Medevac drop was on the way. 2 of mine's guarding at home. I mean, there's nothing in particular that made him... Oh, you know what it might have been? It might have been because he saw the warp prism. And so he knew that he was about to be either 3 or 4 gated without any tank defense. Actually, he knew it was a 4 gate. Okay. Wait. Yeah, I can count. Yeah, he knew it was a 4 gate. Okay, that's what it was. All right, so there is a reason he tapped out. More than just him being frustrated. He had no tank. So with the 4 gate literally about to arrive and his tank, only 1 tank was available, no second bunker on the way, he realized he was going to die. It still seems really abrupt, but he was taking a chance with how many units he built off the factory. 2 Hellions, 4 Widowmans, then Tech Lab, and tank. That's a long time. Kind of unfortunate. Almost like a build order loss there, almost, but... GG's. All right, that's the end of the best of. MaxPax with another one of those dominating best of 5s. That happen every so often, and Clem still has some weaknesses in this matchup. Have to shore that up before he heads off to Katowice.